Good morning, guys. It is March 7th, and the passage today comes from Romans 8. Romans 8 is a really good chapter. I think you should read the whole thing. In all honesty, it's packed full of all kinds of teachings that we're familiar with once we read them, because we've heard them our whole life. Scripture references that really sound familiar as you read through Romans 8, but Chambers is dealing with specifically Paul as he talks about what can separate us from the love of God, and then his in 8:37 Paul says, "No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us," and a couple things there. The fact that we are conquerors is kind of a funny concept. And it's, it reminds me of the Super Bowl rings. One time I had a Super Bowl ring come into my shop, and I want to say it was a New England's Patriots ring, and I didn't buy it and I didn't consign it, but someone wanted to show me, and it was really interesting to see. But when you look at who the ring belonged to, it was someone in like the office staff at the Patriots. It wasn't a player. And I think more than conquerors sometimes, that we are conquerors is kind of an interesting paradox, really, because we're conquerors because of Him, not because of anything we've done. We're just part of the team. We're not even the office staff. We're the water boy at best, and we get a Super Bowl ring, which I think is kind of an interesting concept that Paul calls us more than conquerors. Anyway, there's a few things that Chambers deals with, and then there's a couple thoughts that I had that it brought to mind. He talks about that nothing can wedge between us and the love of God, and that is not to say that nothing can keep us from bad circumstances, nothing can keep us from hardship, nothing can keep us from trials and tribulation. That's not what it's saying. It's saying the love of God will always be present in all those things, in terrible, terrible situations. The love of God is still present between God and His saints. And Chambers says the bedrock of our Christian faith is the unmerited, fathomless marvel of the love of God exhibited on the cross of Calvary, a love we never can and never shall merit. And the other thing that doesn't separate us from the love of God, it's interesting because we sometimes think of the cross as history. The other thing that doesn't separate us from the love of God is time. And so, as relevant as the cross was to those standing in front of Jesus, or the thief next to Him, declaring Him as Lord, the time does not separate us either. That we are we're in the same place as the thief on the cross. And then down later, Chambers says the saint never knows the joy of the Lord in spite of tribulation, but because of it. And this is what I wanted to kind of focus on. A couple thoughts came to mind as I read that, and because Paul's talking about not just angels can't separate us, demons can't separate us, but even trouble, hardship, persecution, famine, nakedness, danger, or sword is what he says in verse 35 of Romans 8. And this expression of a fair weather fan, I'm not sure if you've ever heard that, a fair weather fan. If you ever think about a football game, Sam could relate to this, in Detroit, and the bad weather that's likely to hit Detroit at any given time during the winter months of football season. Fair weather fans are the ones that when it's a nice day, you see them out there cheering and with their, Detroit Lions sweatshirt. I just happen to have my Redskins sweatshirt on today, but when the weather's really bad, they're not there. And you think that's sometimes, if we're not careful, we think our faith is that we are only fair weather believers, fair weather Christians when things are good and the conditions are just right. We're all good. The other expression that really stood out to me was, and I want you guys to ponder this, is the story of a rich man, and it's hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And I wanted to challenge you guys with that paradigm. A rich man is us, by the way, and I don't mean me, and I don't mean people that have a nice home. I mean Americans. I mean the West. I mean our modern society. It is harder for a rich man. That would be all of us, by the way. Every single one of you that has a roof over your head and food in your bellies, more than you can more than you need. That you're a rich man, so it's tough. We need to really be dialed in and realize that if we're not careful, the one thing that can separate us, not from the love of God, but from a truly can separate our hearts from God is, and I know I took a little sidestep there, but is our affluence. We really need to be careful of that. But back to the fair weather thing. Realize today that nothing can separate you from God's love. Whatever you're going through, whatever you're thinking, whatever you're pondering, whatever situations come up, nothing will separate you from the love of God. So we just need to reach out for it. Have a great day, guys.